I'm Mick Cornett. I'm the mayor of Oklahoma City. Well, it seemed to me that we were on a path of unsustainable sprawl. Our city is extremely large from a city limit standpoint, 620 square miles, and we had started expanding in all those directions. We had to somehow put an infusion of capital into the inner city, so somehow, from a market standpoint, the inner city can compete with suburbs. And so people who have a choice of where to live would have an equal chance of choosing to live closer to the city center than on the edges of the city center. So we've invested heavily in transportation, we've invested heavily in the schools, and we've invested heavily in a lot of the amenities that the urban home dweller is looking for. You've got to somehow make a suburban dweller realize that the quality of life in the suburbs is directly related to the intensity of the core of the city. And that's not instinctual, but you can't be a suburb of nothing. Well, it's going to take people in those neighborhoods who want to help make it happen. You're not going to be able to do it. You can't select these things on your own. You got to have neighborhood enthusiasts, who want to be just looking for the city to help partner. And so that's the first thing you look for. Where's an enthusiastic group of people who want to make their neighborhood better? And how can we partner to help? There's a lot of federal programs that you can tap into to try to help lead them to and get your planning department involved. And a lot of time it takes some creativity. And it always takes a lot of hard work. But there's a lot of success stories around the country, and Oklahoma City has plenty of them. I thought the first step toward addressing the obesity issue was getting a conversation going. You're not going to address a problem unless you acknowledge you have a problem. And in Oklahoma City, we weren't talking about obesity. And so by calling the press conference and announcing that the entire city was going on a diet and we were going to lose 1 million pounds, what I was doing was trying to do something to have neighbors talk about it over the back fence, or have workers talk about it around the water cooler, or have a husband and wife talk about it for the very first time. And I think that once you acknowledge it and the conversation starts taking place, well, then you brought it out into the open. And I was willing to tell my own personal story about my struggles with weight loss, which isn't fun to do and something, that I had to get used to doing. But I think that also kind of allowed the community to kind of come to grips with it, that this isn't something necessarily to be embarrassed about, but it is something we need to address. And, we had become a community where life revolves around the automobile. And we, from that standpoint on, said, look, let's look at this differently. Let's start looking at creating a city that revolves around people. And that means a whole new way of looking at our streets and our parks and the way we interact with cars. And so from this point on, the planning department's going to step up, the public works department is going to be listening carefully, and we're all going to do this together. The best thing I could do for a family who's underperforming is to try and create one more quality job in the community. And for someone who has a job, get them a better job. And for someone who doesn't have a job created. And so everything that I've done, even though it may seem as if I was taking on a health issue or I was taking on a transportation issue, it was really all coming back to economic development and jobs. And in the last 8 years, we've created over 80,000 new jobs, and we have the lowest unemployment in the United States. And so I think the fact that I and the Chamber of Commerce and City Council and our city staff have focused on job creation and raising that per capita income as a way to address the social issues has, in a sense, helped those situations. But we didn't directly work at it from City Hall. We went at it from an economic development standpoint. In Oklahoma City, we have addressed the capital needs of the community. We have built up political capital in that the citizens understand that the city government is going to do what it said it was going to do. And I think that's a very fragile element. We could lose that public confidence very, very quickly. You're only as strong as your last initiative and how it did. And every one of them has to meet or exceed the citizens' expectations. And you have to kind of assume you know what those expectations are. Some other aspects to it. From a political standpoint, we're nonpartisan. So when I run for mayor, it doesn't say that I'm a Republican or a Democrat, and the same with the City Council. We also have a manager form of government, which allows the mayor and council to a certain extent, spend some time envisioning and trying to work on problems that aren't addressing us today as much as they may 10 years from now. And so a lot of the things we work on will not be affecting the city at all much until into the next decade. And the city manager has the task of performing the day-to-day operations. And so I think the council and mayor are somehow removed from the day-to-day operations. And so that allows us to be working on the planning side and executing a vision and letting the city manager help us get there. One other aspect is just the unity of the community. And so the council and I get along. There aren't any voting cliques. And if someone isn't voting with you on an issue right now, they're not going to turn around at retribution and vote against you in 10 minutes. On our city council, we all vote independently.